For those suffering from mental health problems, the internet can be a door to getting help and finding a community, but can also be an open a user to extremely damaging content that encourages self-harm. Aimee Walton is among many who have taken their own lives after spending time on a pro-suicide forum. Aimee's sister, Adele Zeynep Walton, is channeling her personal loss into campaigning for a safer digital world. Adele's book, Logging Off: The Human Cost of Our Digital World, argues it shouldn't just be an individual's responsibility to keep themselves safe online. Well, Adele Zeynep Walton joins us live now to talk about this. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24. Could you start by telling us about your sister Aimee and her story? I mean, this is what spurred you to write this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So Aimee was a really gifted and creative young person. She was 21 years old. She was Pharrell's super fan for sure. She was on stage with him 5 times. And both me and Aimee grew up on social media. We both got social media accounts at around the age of 10. And, you know, for many of our years as teens, it was a source of community. But after the pandemic, when Aimee was really struggling with her mental health, unfortunately, she was drawn to a different type of community online, and that is the pro-suicide forum that she ended up on.
And tell us about what kinds of things that you found in the wake of that. You went looking through her search history and things like that?
Yes, so following her death, a police investigation informed us that Aimee had spent time on this forum. She had joined in the 6 months around her death. And essentially from my research on this forum, you know, it isn't some place limited to the dark web. It's very easily accessible. You know, if you search for something like this, it comes up on Google, which I think is awful. And essentially this is a space founded by the same founders of the world's largest incel forum, and the only forum that women are allowed on. They host 4 forums, and the only one women are allowed on is the suicide forum. So I'm really concerned about how much of a, you know, safe space this actually is. And in fact, I feel that there are many insidious actors on this forum.
And give us a sense of how common this is. Is it correct to say that since your sister's death, you've been hearing of about one person pretty much who dies every month in similar circumstances?
Absolutely. It is extremely, you know, impactful and wide-reaching. So far in the UK, at least 97 people have died after using this forum, and 88 people have died as a result of the same supplier of the poison that my sister was able to get because of the advertisement on this forum. You know, I'm from Southampton, we're from Southampton, and we've been speaking to our MP, and he's been really supportive on taking action on this issue. But sadly, 2 years after Aimee died in 2022, we found out just last year of a 17-year-old boy called Vlad from the same city as us who has also died after using this forum.
So what we're dealing with here are what are called online harms, but it's not a term that we've really heard a lot of, but it could be quite important, particularly in terms of legal action.
Yeah, definitely. Online harms is this term that has come about since we have sort of started seeing the impacts of the lack of regulation in our physical world. You know, often the digital world is framed as separate and untouchable, but actually everything that we see online, as shown through my sister's death, but not only hers, but all of the countless victims of social media harms, this completely shapes our lives. It shapes our mental well-being, it shapes our physical safety, and this is why regulation is so vital now and really, really important and urgent.
What kinds of regulation then are you hoping to be put in place?
Well, in terms of the forum that my sister was on, I would really like to see a ban on this forum, because this forum is assisting suicide at a systematic scale, and that is something that, at least in the UK, that is a criminal act. It needs to be banned. It is harming so many people, but also more long term, we need a ban on addictive design. You know, we are seeing a generation growing up who are absolutely addicted. You know, I am lucky enough to remember some of my childhood off a screen, but the next generation have a very different upbringing, and sadly many of them are addicted and they're being exposed to this type of harm on a daily basis. The vast majority of children in the UK have seen harmful content. And if that isn't a public health crisis, then I really don't know what is.
Well, here in the European Union, some countries want to set rules around how much time children spend on social media. But it's not just children, is it? I mean, people can become vulnerable to these sorts of things at any point in their life.
Totally. And that's the point that I really try to emphasize in my book. Aimee was 21 years old. Whilst she wasn't a child, she was still subject to the harms and the negative impact of this type of harmful content. And it isn't just children. This is a human rights issue. We need to protect children. We need to protect vulnerable adults. Everyone needs to be able to lead a safe and healthy digital life. And that's why I think it's really important that we aren't only focusing on smartphone bans or social media bans, but we also tackle the problem at the root. And what that is the addictive design of social media. We could turn off things like infinite scroll, autoplay, all of those design features that we think are, just part and parcel of the digital world. They're actually curated and intentionally designed to keep us scrolling no matter the cost. And as we see from, experiences like my own families, but countless families across the globe, that cost is far too high.
And you mentioned earlier that an investigation's found that the two men who allegedly founded this forum are also running a number of websites for what are known as incels or involuntary celibates. What do you think the link is there between these two things?
I mean, I think the link is inextricable. These two men have self-identified as being incels, which is essentially a term for men who think that women are the fault of all the problems that we see in society. And often that then leads to violence in the physical world. It isn't just an ideology, but it's something we're seeing now shaping violence against women and girls in society, in our communities. And the sort of growing rise of popular figures such as Andrew Tate on social media is really fueling that too. Gen Z men and women are the most polarized politically in terms of our views on what feminism has done for society. Young men veer much more further towards the fact that the idea that it's been a harmful thing, whilst women think that it's been a really positive thing. And I'm, of course, definitely on that perspective. But violence against women and girls is now not limited to our physical world. And the ideology that leads to the type of violence we're seeing offline is being fueled online through these ideologies that circulate on these forums, where now in society, it's not acceptable to be spouting that type of rhetoric. And, they've been offered a safe space on these types of forums.
And just lastly, before we run out of time, how has writing this book made you question your own habits?
It definitely has made me question my own habits of social media use. If anything, I've experienced a type of unraveling of the sort of addiction that I have with social media. And of course, it is an everyday battle because these companies have so much money. They have designed these platforms to keep us scrolling, whatever the cost. But I have really found a relationship of intention with my social media use. And now I'm hoping that I can spread that through this book too.
All right, Adele Zeynep Walton, thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24.